Love isn't supposed to be terrifying. But that letter changed everything. It was Valentine's Day. Nothing extravagant. Nothing over the top. Just something small. A reminder of love. Ryan worked long hours. Always had. Early mornings. Late nights. The kind of schedule that left little room for romance. I didn't mind. I understood. Still, I wanted to do something for him. Something to break the routine. So, I wrote him a letter. Not a text. Not a card from the store. A real letter. I sat at the table, pen in hand, staring at the blank page. Then I started writing. I wrote about the first time we met. The way he had stumbled over his words, nervous but trying not to show it. The way I had pretended not to notice. I wrote about the nights we stayed up talking, losing track of time until the sky turned pink with morning light. I wrote about the little things. How he always held my hand when we crossed the street. How he hummed under his breath when he was focused. I wrote about love. Not the kind in movies. The real kind. The kind that stays. When I finished, I folded the letter and sealed it in an envelope. Before he left for work, I slipped it into his bag. A surprise. Something small. Something real. That night, he came home as usual. Same tired smile. Same loosened tie. Same sigh as he dropped his bag by the door. A kiss on the forehead. A quiet greeting. Dinner was the same as always. He talked about work. I listened. I waited. But he didn't mention the letter. Not once. I told myself it didn't matter. But I kept thinking about it. The next morning, I was still in bed when I heard it. The sound of the mail slot opening. The soft rustle of paper sliding onto the floor. I almost ignored it. Just another bill. Another advertisement. But something made me get up. I walked to the door, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. An envelope lay on the floor. My name was written on the front. The handwriting was Ryan's. A warmth spread through me. He wasn't the type to write letters. That wasn't his thing. I picked up the envelope, turning it over in my hands. It felt colder than it should have. I opened it. The first few lines were sweet. I got your letter. Thank you. It meant more to me than you know. You always know how to make me smile. Always. A small smile pulled at my lips. Then, I need you to listen carefully. This is important. I don't know who's been coming home to you every night, but it isn't me. The smile vanished. I stared at the words. Read them again. They didn't change. The warmth in my chest disappeared. I read the letter over and over, my fingers tightening around the paper. It had to be a joke. It had to be. Ryan never joked like this. But what else could it be? I stood there for a long time, staring at the letter. Then, slowly, I folded it back into the envelope. I placed it in my nightstand drawer. Out of sight. But not out of mind. A prank. That's what it had to be. Some stupid joke. Maybe someone at his office had found my letter. Copied his handwriting. Sent this back to mess with me. Or maybe Ryan himself had done it. For what reason, I didn't know. I let out a small, uneasy laugh. It wasn't funny. But I told myself it had to be. The handwriting was perfect. The words too precise. I shook my head, tucking the envelope deeper into the drawer. At breakfast, Ryan sat across from me, scrolling through his phone. He looked normal. The same as always. Same tired eyes. Same way he cradled his coffee mug, hands wrapped around it like he was soaking in the warmth. I watched him, waiting for something. He didn't look up. The letter sat in my nightstand. I pushed it from my mind. Then he laughed. A small chuckle under his breath. I glanced up. He was still looking at his phone. I frowned. The joke he was laughing at, I had told him before. The last time, he had barely smiled. Now, he was laughing. Something about it felt wrong. I reached for the lighter, turning on the stove. Ryan flinched. It was small. Almost unnoticeable. But I saw it. The way his fingers tightened around the mug. The way his shoulders stiffened. I set the lighter down. He met my eyes. And smiled. I forced myself to smile back. Normal. Everything was normal. Except it wasn't. I leaned forward slightly, breathing in his cologne. Wrong. It smelled different. Close, but not quite right. I hesitated. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe I was overthinking. I told myself that. Again and again. But the letter was still in my nightstand. And I couldn't stop thinking about it. I needed answers. I waited until I got to work. My fingers hovered over my phone before I finally sent the message. Simple. Casual. Did you get my letter? I watched the screen. No dots. No response. The office was quiet. Too quiet. I walked past the rows of desks, past familiar faces. People who should have seen him. No one stopped me. No one said anything. Then I reached his desk. Untouched. His chair sat empty. His coffee mug was still there. A thin layer of dust on the rim. Like no one had used it in days. I felt eyes on me. A coworker. Hovering nearby. Uncertain. He stepped forward, holding something. An envelope. He left this a few days ago. We weren't sure what to do with it. I took it. My name was on the front. The handwriting was his. I opened it. One sentence. If you're reading this, I didn't make it. Burn everything. I drove home. I shouldn't have. I should have gone somewhere else. But I couldn't think. The note sat beside me on the passenger seat. I kept glancing at it. I read the words over and over, my mind trying to twist them into something else. Some other meaning. Something that made sense. The house came into view. The driveway. The porch light. I pulled in, turned off the engine. I sat there for a moment, staring at the front door. Then I stepped inside. Ryan was waiting. Smiling. Too much. Too wide. He stood in the center of the living room, watching me. "Hey." His voice was the same. Exactly the same. "Hey," I said back. My voice sounded off. I set my bag down. Everything in me screamed to turn around, walk back out, leave. But I didn't. I forced myself to move. To act normal. To breathe. The note was still in my pocket. The words were still in my head. If that's not Ryan, what is it? I sat on the couch. He sat beside me. Close. Too close. I swallowed, keeping my expression neutral. I had to be sure. I had to know. "You remember our first trip together?" I asked. A test. Subtle. His smile didn't waver. "Of course." "Tell me about it." No hesitation. "The cabin. The one by the lake. You made us hot chocolate, but you spilled yours everywhere. We spent half the night trying to clean it up." I nodded. Everything he said was true. But we had never been to a cabin by a lake. I had made it up. He didn't know. Because he wasn't Ryan. I forced a laugh. I smiled. Like I believed him. But I didn't. And now I knew. I couldn't let it know. I had to play along. It was still watching me. Every move. Every breath. I smiled. Acted normal. I couldn't let it sense what I knew. I had to leave. But I needed a reason. "We're out of milk," I said. It nodded. "I'll go grab some things from the store." It kept smiling. "Want anything?" It shook its head. "I'll be back soon." It stepped closer. "Hurry back." I grabbed my keys. My bag. Walked to the door. Didn't rush. Didn't hesitate. Opened it. Stepped outside. The air felt heavy. I closed the door behind me. Kept walking. Made it to the car. Opened the door. Slipped inside. Locked it. I didn't go to the store. I drove. Fast. Straight to his office. The note in my pocket felt heavier than it should have. Burn everything. But first, I needed proof. I needed to know. If Ryan was really gone. Or if there was still time. The building was dark. I parked. Got out. No one around. The front doors were locked. I needed another way in. I circled the building. Found the side entrance. Tried the handle. Locked. I looked around. Spotted a small window, slightly open. Reached up. Slid it wider. Pulled myself through. Landed inside. The office was silent. Too silent. I moved quickly. Found his desk. Still untouched. Still wrong. I checked his drawers. Nothing. His files. Nothing. Then I saw it. The storage room. Locked. I needed to get in. I grabbed a paperclip. Unfolded it. Worked the lock. Seconds passed. A click. The door creaked open. I stepped inside. The air was stale. The light flickered once, then stayed on. His coat, still hanging. His coffee mug, still there. Days old. No dust. Like he had planned to come back. But never did. I turned. Looked at the desk in the corner. A pile of unopened mail. Then, something beneath the files. Another note. Same handwriting. Same pen. I picked it up. Unfolded it. Read it. It's afraid of fire. My breath caught. I kept reading. If you're reading this, it knows. And it's watching you. I felt it. A shift in the air. Something behind me. Watching. I turned. Nothing. But I wasn't alone. I needed to leave. I needed to burn everything. Now. I drove home. My hands gripped the wheel too tightly. My breath felt too shallow. The note sat beside me, the words burned into my mind. It's afraid of fire. If you're reading this, it knows. And it's watching you. I didn't want to go back. But I had no choice. The road stretched ahead, too empty, too long. The house came into view. The porch light glowed weakly, casting long, unnatural shadows across the front steps. The windows stared back at me. Dark. Empty. Waiting. My voice was steady. It had to be. He tilted his head. The smile didn't waver. He didn't blink. Not once. Did you get everything you needed? He knew. I forced a smile. Yeah. The air thickened. A weight settled over the room. I could feel it. Something else. Watching. Waiting. I needed to move. But not too fast. Not too obvious. I took a step toward the kitchen. He didn't move. Just stood there. Smiling. Watching. Want a drink? I asked. Casual. Normal. He said nothing. I walked past him. Made it to the counter. My hand reached for the whiskey bottle. My fingers curled around the neck. I turned. He was still there. Still smiling. Still not blinking. You seem different, he said. The bottle was heavy in my grip. Long day. I uncapped it. Tilted it. Let the liquid spill onto the floor. Slow. Deliberate. The scent filled the air. Sharp. Thick. The thing wearing Ryan's face didn't react. Just watched. I kept pouring. The puddle spread. Soaked into the floorboards. He tilted his head further. The smile never faded. What are you doing? His voice was softer now. I set the bottle down. My hand slid into my pocket. The matchbook. I gripped it. Tight. Cleaning up. I pulled out a match. Struck it. The flame flared to life. A glow between my fingers. His face didn't change. But something shifted. A crack beneath the surface. A ripple in the stillness. You don't want to do that, he said. The first flicker of something real in his voice. I didn't answer. I dropped the match. The fire caught instantly. The flames licked across the floor. Fast. Hungry. The air thickened with heat. Smoke curled toward the ceiling. The thing screamed. Not in pain. In rage. Its skin is peeled. Split. Beneath, not bone. Not flesh. Something else. Something wrong. It reached for me. I stumbled back. The fire spread. The walls trembled. The ceiling groaned. The thing thrashed. Its body twisted, contorted, unraveling. It wasn't Ryan. It had never been Ryan. I ran. Flames roared around me. The house groaned. Splintered. Collapsed. The heat swallowed everything. Then, Emma, it's me, help. The voice came from the fire. Weak. Familiar. Ryan's voice. I stopped. Turned. The flames blurred my vision. Smoke choked the air. The house was falling. And Ryan was inside. Or something pretending to be him. I didn't know. I couldn't know. The fire raged. The screams twisted. Then, silence. Nothing but crackling embers, and then, darkness. The hospital smelled like antiseptic. I sat beside the bed. My fingers curled around his. Ryan's. Warm. Solid.